Well, the summer's cattle market has taken us on quite a ride. We started with record high prices that we saw in that Corn Belt Classic. Watch the futures back off towards midsummer, and now we're heading into the fall calf run. So where does the market really stand? Well, this week, Trent Stewart with Superior Livestock joins us as we look at what we learned throughout these summer video sales and what cattle producers should be thinking about next.
Packing industry has a little bit more leverage right now on some fat cattle, but I think the general consensus is we want to buy them cheaper to feed yards, but first we got to find them. And so I think it's truly a supply and demand driven market.
And despite some of the pressures that we've seen, cattle prices still remain historically strong.
The fact of the matter is they've been in the red, and they're going to work very diligently to get in the black and to make up for some lost ground. So I think we still have a very, very good market. We're defying gravity.
So what should producers be thinking about as we head into this fall run, and just how long could this market hold together?
I think we're good in 2027. I think the one to be looking at is probably 2028.
What buyers are looking for, when to market those calves, and what the latest sales may be telling us about this cattle market. That's on today's edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. The markets and the weather. That's usually the two topics that seem to always surface in discussion amongst folks. And today we're going to be doing just that. Hi, everyone. Justin Mills, your host here. Thank you for joining us on the Working Ranch Radio Show. As you heard there in the opening, Trent Stewart with Superior Livestock will be joining us. We've come out of that Winnemucca sale, Video Royale sale for Superior Livestock. What's that telling us as we look ahead into this market comparatively to where we've been at through this summer? A lot of optimism still in this market, and I think you're get kind of filled in here today on that, as well as for those of you that have not yet marketed your calves, maybe an idea of some things to be thinking about as you make your marketing plans. Also, as I said, weather, we always do that here on the Working Ranch Radio Show, as meteorologist Don Day will be back in as we get a look at our long-range weather. Going to give us a little bit of an outlook for that September month. I know we're a couple weeks out from that, but nevertheless, it's always good to be kind of looking ahead and what he anticipates for this as we approach the fall time of the year. Hey, just want to let you know as well that if you do want to get a hold of me, maybe you have a show idea, topic that you'd like us to look into, you can send me an email at justin.workingranch@gmail.com. And if you're listening here today, you have to step away from the radio for unforeseen reasons. You can always catch all of our programs by going to our site at workingranchradio.com, or you can also go to any podcast platform out there and you can download our show. It also works good if you have to be in a spot where you don't have good cell reception, you want to listen to it on your own time, get it downloaded to your device, and then you can listen to it when it works for you. Hey, I mentioned this last week, want to mention it again, but it's coming on 20 years since the Working Ranch magazine started back in 2006. The Captain Tim O'Byrne has been with the publication ever since, and he and all the crew there at Working Ranch magazine hard at it and coming up with this next edition that will be kicking off a series of several issues that will be featuring different things and articles and stories and the folks that have been a part of Working Ranch magazine over these last 20 years. So it's a good time to get subscribed to Working Ranch magazine. You can go to workingranchmag.com and you can get it started, or you can simply stop by your local tractor supply store and you can find Working Ranch magazine right there on the shelf. And even in some of the ones that I've been in, you can even find some back issues as well. So check it out for yourself. And again, celebrating 20 years for Working Ranch magazine. What an accomplishment, and still one of the strongest and most respected publications out there dedicated specifically to the working ranch. And finally, just one more thing. I wanted to mention that the next edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show, we're going to be tackling one of the biggest long-term questions in the commercial cow business. How do you build a commercial cow that's profitable for the long haul? And joining me for that program is going to be Trey Patterson of the Padlock Ranch, and John Maddox of Maddox Cattle Company. I'm telling you, folks, I've already had this conversation with these guys and recorded that interview, and I'm telling you, there is a lot of good stuff in that conversation. So be sure to join us on the next edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Well, let's get into our subject at hand here today. And joining us on the program is Trent Stewart with Superior Livestock. He's one of the reps, also an auctioneer and manager of Region 1 for Superior Livestock. He's out of Redmond, Oregon. And Trent, good to have you here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Well, Justin, thank you very much for having me.
So we've been kind of keeping track of this market throughout the summer. As you and I were talking before we started here today, earlier in the summer, we had Bailey Blue on. We were talking about the Corn Belt Classics and the results that came out of that really set this a good tone to the summertime. And then 3 or 4 weeks ago, Clint Berry was on, of course, as we were talking about the week in the Rockies and the sale. And I think on a big picture on this, Trent, as you look at this market and that, I mean, just kind of your initial thoughts as you saw the summer start, things kind of soften a bit, still good, and then how things are kind of floated in through this Video Royale sale.
I think we were very, very inflated as we went into summer and the Corn Belt Classic. All-time record highs, certainly very, very bullish. And I think that as we've kind of migrated through summer, we've still seen astronomical highs in different weight classes of cattle, program cattle, reputation cattle. Good cattle have been selling very, very well in spite of a futures market that has deflated some, and we've taken quite a bit of money off fat cattle as of late. And the packing industry has a little bit more leverage right now on some fat cattle, but I think the general consensus is we want to buy them cheaper to feed yards, but first we got to find them. And so I think it's truly a supply and demand driven market. And the power of an auction is certainly showed, because we had receipts in Winnemucca and in Steamboat that were as high as the Corn Belt in places. It just very case specific on the cattle, in spite of the board being 30 cents lower.
Well, and as you said, from a fundamental standpoint, there's a lot of strength to supporting this market, as I've talked with even folks from a long-term basis, and we can talk about that in a minute. But one of the things we also saw from the start of summer up until now, and actually between the Video Royale sale, Winnemucca, and in Steamboat, was the opening of the Mexico border. Definitely had its effect on the futures, but even as we speak here today, a lot of that has kind of been wiped away, some of that loss that we saw. As you went into that sale in Winnemucca, what was kind of the feeling? What was kind of the mood as you went into that sale?
Well, I think everybody was excited to market livestock, whether you're a buyer or a seller. But that was a looming kind of cloud that had been on everybody's mind, is when they're going to do it. I think that people were surprised that the Wall Street Journal is the one that broke the news, and that Rollins didn't come out and give full disclosure on it to the industry prior to. People were a little bit unnerved on how we got the news, but we were going to get it one way or the other. And a lot of people think it's positive, honestly. They've improved their infrastructure in Mexico already. They're utilizing a lot of their own fat cattle or cattle and then selling it to us in boxes anyway. If anything, this may keep some stocker operators and some southern feedlots in business, and that's very, very positive for our industry.
Yeah. Well, I think this subject of the Mexico border is different for different folks across the country. And I think we understand that could be somewhat of a sensitive issue, but something that you just mentioned there was something that I guess in previous shows that we've had is we've got an infrastructure in our country that can support a certain volume of cattle. And with the low numbers that our herd is at, we're way below that infrastructure capacity. And if we run on that on a long-term basis, that could be very detrimental to our industry, which is kind of what you were pointing to, isn't it?
Oh, no, 100%. And I want to be very, very clear. I want food security and the health of our cattle to be absolutely number one. But if it's something that's treatable and we can manage, I think we need to use good common sense and try to keep as much business flowing as possible. I think that going forward, where we were at 1.2 or 1.3 million cattle, it may be half of that they come through now. There's excessive drought, nationwide. I can guarantee you that the Northwest is certainly not going to be expanding anytime soon. I know that they've taken a pretty hard look at some of the heifer retention numbers, and they are modest at best. I'll guarantee the entire Northwest is black. And
Mhm.
so pasture is going to be a real issue because it's not just this year when we lost the feed. There's so much government ground up here that we run on. They won't allow you to go back for multiple
Yeah.
years, before
Mhm.
you can graze this out. So we're going to keep this cow herd pretty tight, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let's kind of switch off a little bit of just maybe the tone of everything that happened there at Winnemucca, but just in general, where, I mean, you're representing an area there that's been in a lot of wildfires. We've seen it even into Region 2 and places where it's just extreme drought situations. It's kind of your thoughts as we look into that. I know we're talking when on this sale, we're talking a lot of feeder options, but from the standpoint of heifer retention, those kinds of things, when you're droughted out, not a lot of feed out there, hays, people having to get in hay. Just kind of your thoughts in regards to that whole drought conversation and the tone that it's playing in this market right now.
Well, I think it's on everybody's mind that the feed stuffs are going to be higher and our cost of gain is going to go up, and that will be a game changer somewhat. Again, these feedlots and feeder operators, they want to try to buy them cheaper. They've been so lofty because everybody needs to be profitable, but they just don't know where they're going to get them, and so that they might not allow that to happen. Winnemucca was certainly a good indicator of that,
Hmm.
even though we had a futures market that had probably declined by $30. It's still a very, very strong market, especially on the program cattle.
Yeah. How much you seeing on the drought thing? Of course, a lot of folks looking at shipping these calves maybe a little bit earlier, and that's something probably to talk about even later on when we start talking about future sales if folks are wanting to get involved. But you see any more movement above normal than in the previous years?
A little bit. We've been selling a few light calves out here on the spot market as of late. And people that got burnt out. Where there's a will, there's a way. What they'll probably do is use a lot of their fall cow feed to finish weaning these calves, and then they're just going to have to feed the cows for a very long time. Our hay is probably 40% higher than it was already.
Hmm.
And I think that that's going to continue once we get a little bit closer to winter. It'll resonate pretty hard. We've been kind of in survival mode, if you
Yeah.
will, here as of late. And I'm sure you saw that today, where
Hmm.
we had a big spike in corn and then these, increasing hay costs. I think it's on the horizon to maybe where we were sub $1 cost of gains. We may be towards the, 115 to 130 in the
Hmm.
future.
Yeah. Well, Trent, let's take a break here. When we come back, you talked a little bit about it, kind of what were the buyers actually looking for? What were they paying for? What's, as you look back over the results that we talked about in Corn Belt and Week in the Rockies and even this Video Royale sale, what were buyers willing to pay for? What were they looking for? And let's talk about that when we come back, all right?
Sounds good.
Agrocarbon works with farmers and ranchers to implement practices that promote soil health and add a new revenue stream. Now, when you work with Agrocarbon, you'll gain a partner that provides flexible payments and local agronomic expertise for your row crop or your range or even your pasture operations. Partnering with Agrocarbon is an investment in your land and your ranch's future. Get started today at agrocarbon.com.
All right, Trent, you had made a comment in the last segment about even though we saw maybe some air out of the market from the beginning of the summer up until now, still prices high, but there were still some of these cattle that buyers were willing to pay for. I want you to expand on that a little bit more if you can.
Well, I think genetics are number one, but obviously great vaccination programs and reputation cattle, not only professional deliveries, but cattle that have been inoculated correctly and have great survival rates. There's lower morbidity and mortality in certain classes of cattle. It was first and foremost. Of course, big push for Angus influence cattle, both red and black. I think that there's just a very, very high percentage of grade, obviously, in those breeds of cattle. But it's really case specific. I think it's built around whatever meat business that you have created, a branded beef program, if you will.
Hmm.
There are still some feeders as we make these cattle so much bigger than we ever have. I mean, we're feeding some of these yearling cattle that typically were 160-day cattle, 180. And in
Yeah.
some case, when you get in the corn belt, we're up over 200 days, even on a big feeder when they get locked up. So what I'm getting at is if we're going to push them that far, some feeding operations are looking for maybe a little bit of continental to influence to maybe help out some heart health when we're
Yeah.
making these cattle as big as we are. They're having more trouble now in the last 30 days of the feeding segment. It's definitely a new caveat, if you will, because the industry has changed.
Yeah. As we were talking in the last segment about some guys maybe going a little bit earlier, what are you seeing as far as these weight classes? I know that's the conversation that I hear as I talk with producers, even our own ranching operation, as I look at when we want to market our calves this year, potentially looking at definitely going up to a month to 45 to 60 days earlier, which means these calves are going to be a little bit lighter. What are you seeing across these weight classes in the cattle as far as light weights under 5 to 5 1/4, and then these 6 weight calves?
Well, I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen until we start weaning these calves as far as weights go. Can we deliver what we promised and make sure we get to that, 550-pound base weight?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess what I was meaning by weight classes is, are the buyers, are they good with these lighter weight calves? Are they wanting heavier calves, or what's kind of your thought in this?
Oh, again, it's case specific. I mean,
Okay.
as far as fat cattle marketing goes,
Mm-hmm.
April
Mm-hmm.
used to always be the target. I think June has become the new April. We seem to have found our highest priced fat cattle in that month as of late in the last several years. So, of course, anything that weighs 7 or more that can come early, in that September, October bracket has been very, very popular. But there's plenty of stocker operators that are out there that need to invest in lightweight cattle too. And of course, those are very, very popular if they're come late in December, fit it, at least in the Northwest, and fit a grass program, particularly in California. But the thing that makes the Northwest unique is there's fewer feedstuffs, and the ranching community feeds or hard weans a lot of these calves on high forage and just hay fed conditions. And so the cattle are healthy. They just get a little bit older and they lose some flesh, and they come in a product that's got a ton of comp gain, and they're just very, very thrifty. There's a lot of conversion in these cattle.
Yeah, which speaks to, which it said before, some of the genetics that we see in there. I want to go through some of these things and kind of tell me your take on it as we talk about when we're getting into marketing cattle. Is it worth it to do this or that or whatever that may be? So I want to go through a couple things here. What are you seeing in weaned versus unweaned calves?
Well, I think we set the market with the wean calves, and at times, we'll see them 20 or 30 higher. We saw them this summer. And then there's times you'll get a really high quality set because we sell the calves right off the cow after we offer the and set the market with the wean ones. And
Mhm.
then sometimes there's some frustration that the ball and calves brought nearly what a wean one did. So why do it? And I always stress your reputation's at stake, and this is a residual business, and you want those buyers back each and every year, and you don't want mortality or morbidity or try to lessen it. That one's tough to look at because we do set the market with a wean one. If we had started with the balling calves, I think that each one of those weight brackets would be significantly less right out of the gate. And there's still some disparity. I mean, obviously, especially on maybe an average set of cattle or even above average, but where we see a tight gap sometimes is on a really fancy program set of cattle that have train loads of genetics and reputation behind them.
Mhm. What would you tell somebody that's kind of vacillating between sending calves, balling calves, or weaning those calves in light of our other discussion that we've already had, where some of us folks in drought situations, what would you tell somebody?
I'd figure out a way to get them weaned. I mean, if you're in dire straits and you just can't and you got to go off the cow, then that so be it. But if there's any possible way that you can do that and protect your reputation and the cattle's reputation and do the fairest thing for the cattle, I would wean them.
Mhm. Okay. You touched on it a little bit about the health aspects of it. If these cattle have seen a round of shots or more, or whatever that might be, what are you feeling in that aspect? How much input do we put into those calves, and then some back?
Well, you need to give them 3 rounds of modified live vaccine if possible, especially if the
Mhm.
cow herd has been introduced to it in the past. If you were weaning, especially if you're going to sell a calf right off the cow, a baller, for sure. We need to give them as much chance at immunity as possible. If you're going to use a killed vaccine, I would certainly wean them as long
Mhm.
as you can. And when I say as long as you can, at least 45 days, and 60 is even better by a long ways. And it's becoming more of the standard. At 30 days, the cattle are pretty wrung out in most cases. It's probably about the most stressful time period. And from then, from 30 days to 60 days, there's miraculous changes in the cattle. You get to 60, they're almost like little yearlings. So
Yeah.
if you're going to do it, just do it right and do it for the right amount of time. I see a lot of producers make mistakes. They'll make an investment in the vaccine and the feed and, try to build a facility to wean them. And then they don't wean them long enough and they don't get paid for it. And it doesn't do anybody any good. It's probably the most costly mistakes that I see.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be a topic that's you're going to need to put a pencil to with the price of hay. And if somebody doesn't have the feed resources, that putting the pencil to whether you wean them or not is going to be something you need to do probably.
Yeah, it's one of those things that dollars and cents. I'm 51 years old and I've been doing this since I was 16. And on paper, it's one of those things that a lot of times you think, man, this makes a lot more sense as a business person to not wean them and sell them off the cow. But in the long run, like I said, for the reputation of the cattle and your ranch, I think it's so, so very important. Plus, it'll open your buyer's base a long ways. And when we get in tougher markets and we have to ship cattle further, nobody's going to put the 10-hour ride or 15-hour ride on a baller where they would do that or attempt that on something that's been weaned. So creating that reputation, it just, there's multiple layers to this onion.
Yeah.
And so I really try to encourage that if you can do it.
Let's talk about some of these other programs that always come up, a lot of the different emblems and the symbols you can put up there when you're selling cattle from all natural to NHTC, other verified programs. Kind of tell me how those are selling throughout these summer sales in comparison to the cattle that aren't.
Natural and NHTC program cattle are under great demand. And there's certain genetic programs out there, branded beef programs that are in the bull business that have built natural and NHTC non-hormone treated cattle. Like I said, that's their branded beef program. That's what they're selling. And so there's a high demand for those cattle, especially when they're their customers' cattle. I don't see that going away anymore. Everything needs a story. Everybody needs a story. And I think they want to feel good about, what they're ingesting. So it's certainly a lot easier to sell program calf than a non-program calf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's take a break here, Trent. When we come back, let's kind of dip into some of the details out of that Video Royale sale that was at Winnemucca and kind of get through some of those. I know we're not going to get down to the nitty-gritty nickel details of everything, but I think we can get a general analysis of where things were at, and we'll do that when we come back, all right?
Capitalize on crossbreeding with Gelbvieh and Balancer bulls. Raise replacement females with added fertility, increased longevity, and greater productivity. Gelbvieh and Balancer influence females wean more pounds of calf per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer influenced cattle offer increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and have excellent carcass merit. Balancers add the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. This year, make your crossbreeding count with Gelbvieh and Balancer genetics.
As we continue on here today, my guest is Trent Stewart with Superior Livestock, one of the auctioneers that you'd hear on there, also the Region 1 manager out of Redmond, Oregon. And Trent, let's get into some of the details that we saw coming out of the sale there in Winnemucca with the Video Royale sale. You kind of given us some details on that. More than 140,000 head offered in that sale. And I guess in all of that, to start out with, you've highlighted a little bit of that, but maybe recap again. What were some of the lots that to you really kind of stood out in that sale?
Oh, there's so many good cattle in that sale. I'll tell you what really stood out to me the most is, as I've said it before, these cattle are way unhedgeable. So risk management is key, especially when we're at these lofty levels. It costs so much to invest in these cattle and to run a cattle operation. Any level that you're at, whether it's cow-calf production, stocker operator, feedlot, and when some of these cattle are going down the road at $250,000 for a load, these guys are taking a huge gamble. And that's what just makes me so impressed with this industry. They've always been gamblers, but we're feeding America. We're feeding the world. And these cattle are unhedgeable by a long ways. And they were unhedgeable at Corn Belt. They were unhedgeable at Steamboat. And then we got to Winnemucca. And after a big decline in the futures market, because this thing feels like it's trying to adjust, or at least Chicago thinks it should adjust, and to see what those cattle brought, because I think a lack of numbers and so many high quality cattle, we put some of the nation's very best cattle in front of cattle buyers that absolutely needed them. They've got both space and feed and contracts, and they had to get them. They're forced to give way, way above their break evens, and it's a scary situation. And so we've always been a gambling bunch. I just wanted to work for everybody, but I guess comparatively, thus far through the summer, I think Winnemucca was the highest price cattle compared to the board, the CME.
Yeah. Were there any classes of cattle that were maybe a little bit softer than in comparison? I mean, when we say softness, so much of that is relative because it's still a better market than it was even a year ago. But at the same time, in comparison to other things, was there any class of cattle that maybe saw a little softness in?
I think tricolored cattle, if you got 3 or 4 colored cattle that are by 4 or 5 different breeds of bulls or something of that nature, or VAC 24s, which are, cattle that haven't had an upper respiratory vaccines, they hadn't had a modified live. Those cattle struggled.
Hmm.
But other than that, I think the only thing maybe glaring if there was a bad, weighing condition, set of weighing conditions, or something of that nature. Of course, the 6 weight heifer in the month of October can be a little bit of a struggle too. It's a volatile month anyway, health wise. She seems to take the most pressure, but that's like that in any market.
Yeah, that's true. That's going to be a soft side of it for sure. Trent, let's kind of talk a little bit about some of this. I know one of the discussions that always comes up when we start looking at these market reports on this is that we have to take into account there's some variables that's not just like a market report from a spot sale, because there's delivery dates that come into effect on this. And you had talked a bit ago about sometimes some of them light calves in December have some advantages in there, but let's kind of go through some of these delivery dates and kind of from that perspective, what you saw in this last sale as far as what seemed to work and what were kind of the delivery dates that maybe buyers are a little bit hesitant on. And maybe that's a pretty open-ended question because we got weights that go into that factor as well.
Right. I'd say that light cattle that come too early probably have a little gravity on them. At least they do out here. Some
Okay.
people like to wean a light one in September just because the temperature swings are a little bit better, but certainly don't like a little one in October when we're definitely changing seasons. And so many producers need to go in October, especially if they are selling them off the cow. I'd say that the bigger cattle that come earlier, like I'm saying, 7 to 9 weight cattle, September, October, kind of get fat at the right time, so they're very popular. Yeah, I would say that a six weight in October is probably the biggest struggle unless they have a ton of protocol behind them.
Okay. Go through some of those others as you hit that. That makes me ask this question then. Let's start like at a 4.5 weight. What's the optimal time that you'd be sending a 4.5 weight to town?
Oh, in December or January in this
Okay.
country, get the rains in November and December, and it's fairly mild, and the grass comes, and they're waiting for those cattle to get all dried out, and weaned up, and it's becoming with the genetics as such. There's a lot fewer 4 weight cattle in December and January than there used to be. Most of those cattle, just because of their genetic
Hmm.
makeup, are weighing 5.5 or 6 now, where 10 or 15 years ago they didn't. So it's becoming a little bit tougher to procure the really light cattle.
Yeah, that's a good point. On that delivery date, as you were talking about 6 weights in October and then 4.5 weights in December, from a producer standpoint, you can kind of do your math backwards and can kind of work back through the year. It always feels to me like if you're going to pre-sale these calves and get them gone, that's good. But if you're going to try to spot sale in November, November is always kind of an odd month, isn't it, for a spot sale?
I actually get along okay at the end of November and went along towards Thanksgiving. Early November and October are a struggle. I think early November, these feedlots have got a belly full of these balling calves, fleshy calves, and they end up, with some morbidity and some mortality, and they kind of pull off the market until the cattle get healed up and straightened out. So, as a marketer, because I've worked for Superior for a long time, and it's half of my business, but I also own a
Hmm.
livestock market in Madras, Oregon. And so I know and understand the challenges of marketing cattle on the spot market. And October and early November are always a challenge.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Trent, let's take another break here. And as we wrap up our conversation, I just kind of want to pull your brain and kind of some of your thoughts in regards to where you think we're headed with this as we look into the fall time, and there's still some sales that folks can hit. If they want to get these cattle on a video sale, they still can do that, or if they're looking at going to a sale barn, just some things to be thinking about as well. So we'll do that when we come back, okay?
Sounds good.
Your herd needs protein. When the seasons shift, so do your herd's protein needs. SmartLick protein tubs deliver consistent nutrition that drives performance, helping cattle make the most of available forages, maintain condition and power through winter efficiently, giving you peace of mind. Feed smarter, not harder. Go to smartlick.com. That's smartlic.com to find your dealer.
A high-functioning rumen drives herd performance, gut health, and profitability. Levucel SC by Lala Man Animal Nutrition is the only natural occurring rumen-specific active dry yeast probiotic selected to optimize rumen function, boost fiber digestion, and help you get more out of your forage and feed. No matter how you supplement your herd, including Levucel SC can help your cows do more on what they already have. Discover the right formulation for your herd at chooselevucelsc.com.
All right, Trent, before we jump into kind of where you think this market's going as we look ahead for the next month to 2 months out, one of the things I did forget to ask you is we were kind of going through some of the different classes of cattle, and that is the break in the steers and the heifers. That's something I always like to visit with a little bit about because I think it gives us an indication what else fundamentally is happening in the market out there. But what were you seeing as far as in the breaks on these steers and heifers in this sale? Pretty consistent with what we've seen all summer, or are we starting to see some heifer retention?
Oh, I think that there's some heifer retention going on for sure. There's less heifers who are on the market. If you're asking about what the price difference is in the heifers, those light cattle
Yeah.
are kind of 30 or 40 back on the lighter classes of cattle. And I'd say heifers are weighing, 5.5 and down. You get 5.5 and up, they may be 20 back until you get to the yearling weight breaks on that 800 to 900 pound bracket, and they could be 10 to 15 behind the steer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which also, it brings me to another point, just brought that up. Guys need to, if you're marking these cattle, need to really pay attention and encourage your rep to make sure that we're very current when it comes to our weight slides. And that's a slide, and it's supposed to correct the market. Basically, if we come in heavy or light, for that matter, depends on what kind of slide you're using, whether it's conventional or two-way. It's just supposed to be a tool to adjust the market to make it fair for everybody. But I see quite a few slides out there as an auctioneer and a marketer working for Superior Livestock that are about half as big as they should be. That would help you sell your cattle. Somebody in this kind of a market, you have a 15-cent slide, and that was matching a market where we were selling calves for $2.50 a pound, and now we're selling cattle for $4.50 a pound, and you still got this 15-cent slide. Those need to be increased.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So along those same lines, having conversations with producers out there as we've come out of this sale and looking ahead into the next few video sales out there and also this fall run that's going to take place. Coming out of that sale, what's kind of the thoughts and advice you'd offer to guys as they look ahead at marketing their calves right now?
I think that I've always been an advocate to do what you've always done, because buyers are going to be looking for those calves at whatever sale you've been selling them at, whether it's Winnemucca or Sheridan or Steamboat, Corn Belt, what have you. I would get them signed up. I do think that we've got quite a few fat cattle around us for a little bit, and I think that the packing industry is going to be as aggressive as they can in terms of buying the cattle a little bit lower. I don't know what the fall brings. I'm hopeful or cautiously optimistic that we will get some more leverage back when we get into, October or November. The fact of the matter is they've been in the red, and they're going to work very diligently to get in the black and to make up for some lost ground. So I think we still have a very, very good market. We're defying gravity. And when you're selling them at auction, I feel that Superior's done a very good job of that. And I would get them signed up. If you've missed the Sheridan sale, you can get them on the Labor Day sale, which is our next offering. And it's really easy to do so. They've made it very, very convenient, for a producer and a rep to get those cattle signed up. So I don't think I'd play the market, I guess, is what I'm getting at in short. I think you've got a very profitable
Yeah.
marketplace right now as a cow calf producer. I'd take the money and go on.
Yeah. You touched about it briefly at the very first segment. I want to just talk about it again a little bit on this Mexico deal. It definitely was news that has come out this summer, but as that has now been in the market for some time, we've seen some of that drop that took place initially definitely come out of the market. So, as you look from a long-term standpoint into this fall run, do you think that Mexico border issue is going to have any issues on affecting this market?
No, I don't really. We've got one port that's going to open, and I think it's going to be a slow opening. And
Hmm.
I haven't talked to anybody that anticipates just a huge wall of feeder cattle coming to us. So I think it's going to be a slow, gradual build. And as I had stated earlier, it sounds like they've got a lot more infrastructure in place down there, and they're utilizing some of their own plants to harvest the cattle and market them to us in a different way. So I think we've changed the industry somewhat by having this border closed. To me, the biggest game changer, I think, is going to be our cost to gain and then
Okay.
how much leverage we can keep in the fat cattle segment. So we'll see. Right now is traditionally the season where we put money on the boxes, and I think we'll continue to see that. And so hopefully there'll be more profitability on the packing side of things again, so we can keep the chain moving. As if any of us has been in this industry for a long time, know we have got to stay current. And if we
Hmm.
do that, then we maintain leverage. It's again interesting caveat that we're making these cattle as big as we are, and we're trying to reach a prime or choice grade. When we went through the pandemic, and all this high quality beef went to the stores instead of these high end restaurants, people developed a palate for it. And so, choice and prime beef, they've realized that people are willing to give whatever it costs, even exorbitant levels, to have a really good eating experience. And the purebred industry knows and sees that and understands that, and they're building cattle for it. But they've never done it any more efficiently or at any faster rate of speed with ET work and in vitro. And we're
Hmm.
fleshing the very best cows in the world producing a product. It just several years ago, there's a there was a big argument that this is so hard to build maternal genetics and high carcass genetics at the same time, and in a matter of 2 3 years we get some of the most fertile cow families in the business that are carrying more marbling than 10 years ago that were in the very top 5% of the breed. We've got this genetic package out there now that has got the best of both worlds, and they did it almost overnight. So we're going to keep feeding these cattle a few extra days. That's why this thing has been geared to produce more prime and choice beef, right? But it
Hmm.
also comes with a task of we're making these cattle and these carcasses very, very big. The conversion goes down, the cost of gain gets higher, and we see more BCHF, some heart failure in these cattle. And so we're going to have to be careful how we navigate through all this. And that I think
Yeah.
that's going to be a huge topic going forward.
Yeah. Good to know. All right, Trent, final question here, and that is just as you look out into 2027, what are you feeling on this market?
I think we're good in 2027. You just look at the gestation period of a calf, I should say, and then to have to raise that calf, and 6 months later you sell that calf, and then you've got another 230 or 40 days on feed. So I think the one to be looking at is probably 2028 is
Hmm.
where I think that if there is some kind of growth, that may be where we adjust, and we may see a more of a significant adjustment. But I think we're in pretty good shape. And I think with that higher highs, we're going to have much higher lows too.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think it's going to remain a profitable industry, and it should be. The investment has been incredible, and it's really, it's poverty with a view forever. And so to
Yeah.
incentivize these ranches to invest in cattle and invest in their children to stay at home and build cow herds, they have to be incentivized to do it. So I'm super, super happy where we're at. We just need to find the right balance, and the market will find that to make sure that the feeders and the packing industry and the consumers can all be profitable and afford it as well.
Yeah. All right, Trent, I said I had a final question, but I do want to just make sure that we give folks the information. Probably the deadline for getting in the Bighorn Classic is past that, but that sale is going to be coming up. Give us the details on that sale date, and then also the Labor Day sale coming up, anything that we need to know on that.
You bet. Bighorn Classic is going to be August 17th through the 21st. There's 194,000 cattle consigned if you're a buyer. Catalogs are out and they're up, and so are the videos. I would encourage you to get on and you can come up and visit with us. We always love to see everybody at ringside. It's a people business. I'd much rather sell you cattle live, but if you can't, and it's more convenient to do business online, you can go to superiorlivestock.com and you can go right to our website. It's pretty easy to get online and bid. But again, that's August 17th through the 21st. The next opportunity is going to be in Labor Day, our Labor Day sale, and that's September the 2nd and the 3rd. And the catalog deadline is August the 24th. The video deadline is August the 28th for that sale. If you miss that opportunity and you have cattle to sell as we get into the fall, we have sales every other week. And I just encourage you to call 1-800-422-2117 down to the office in Hudson Oaks, or just get online and look up a rep, or if you know a rep, choose a reputable rep too. I want to put that to work. I mean, find a rep that's been real successful, is real professional at what he does or she does, because there is a difference.
Yeah. You know, something else, Trent, too, and I always kind of hit this, that country page is always good to monitor a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. That's convenient. You're asking an auctioneer.
Yeah.
So I'm a little biased to a live auction, but I mean, I'm terrible at trading cattle in the country. I'm not gonna even try to sugarcoat it. And so kicking tires and going back and forth and arm wrestling in the parking lot, I just like to put them on, and everybody gets first choice that way. And if you so desire to be the winning bidder, then you get to own the cattle, and everybody gets a fair shot at it. But you're right. It's a very good tool. Bailey Blue's probably rolling his eyes at me right now, but because he's doing so much of it. And Wes Lichty. So, but they're a great crew. They do a really good job, and they market a lot of cattle on the country page. It's impressive on how many cattle get traded hands, get traded in on that. It's a super tool, and maybe that fits your style, and if you're not into high pressure sales, well, perfect. That's a great avenue.
Yeah, well, Trent, good to visit with you here, and wish you the best to the rest of these sales here this summer.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You bet. And again, our guest today, Trent Stewart with Superior Livestock Auction. Stay with us. Coming up next, meteorologist Don Day is in as we take a look at our long-range weather.
Fascinated by our wild weather? Now you can learn, appreciate, and understand the weather in your own backyard with the new Tropo Rain Gauge. Having achieved the highest rating of any product reviewed by the weatherstationexperts.com, the Tropo boasts rugged durability, impeccable accuracy, and precision to the 100th of an inch. Visit measurerain.com to order a Tropo today and use code RAINDAY. That's RAINDAY for free shipping and 10% off. Go to measurerain.com.
Today's long-range weather brought to you by Long Range Cattle Dewormer with epinephrine, giving you 150 days of parasite protection in just one single dose, saving you time and money, keeping the pressure of those parasites off the cattle and gaining while they're out there working for you. To find out more, you can go to their website at longrangedewormer.com. Well, joining us now with a look at our long-range weather is meteorologist Don Day. And Don, as we talked in our last episode last week, you kind of give us an idea of what is significantly different in the El Nino pattern that we have in this one as it relates to, maybe not the same as 97, but maybe a little more similar to back into the 1950s. So when we look at that, all of that also bringing about some very interesting activity as we look going on, and I know we'll get to the more of a forecast here looking at what's going on inland, but outland and out in the ocean, a lot of storm activity taking place.
Yeah, it's been a very quiet tropical season so far, especially in the Atlantic. But we're seeing both the Atlantic and the Pacific really starting to get going. Now, this is the time of year you expected. August, September, October, the peak months of tropical storm and hurricane activity of note. We're going to have a hurricane most likely forming in the Pacific that could threaten Hawaii. Hawaii doesn't usually get hurricanes. It happens. When they do get hurricanes, it's usually during an El Nino, and that's certainly increasing the possibility for that. In the Pacific, Justin, is going to be very active this late summer and fall. And so there will be parts of Western North America that could see some impacts from that. We also have 3 systems forming in the Atlantic, which has barely had anything so far this summer season. So things are getting a bit more interesting. There's been also some misconceptions, and I'm seeing this online and reading some other things, is that a lot of people think that, we should be into the El Nino impacts now, or should have been since the start of summer, and it really doesn't work that way. It really starts to manifest itself late summer, but more likely this fall and winter. So that's when El Nino is really going to kick in. But we do see a lot of very moist air, and in some part aided by those warm Pacific waters coming into North America here over the next week or two.
Yeah. And as you and I were talking before we started, you said definitely in these next couple of weeks, quite a bit different type of weather than what the areas that have been maybe more west in the country, that hot, dry weather that a lot of us have experienced for the last couple of months. That's kind of going to have a different tone. That hot weather is going to be really focused down on those southern plains.
Yeah, it's the southern plains now to see what a lot of people in the northern plains and the western high plains and Rockies experience this summer, and that's being under the high pressure ridge and the heat. Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, eastern New Mexico, then along the Gulf Coast region will be the hottest relative to the 30-year average, while relief from the heat from the northern plains to the Rockies and into the Great Basin states will occur here over the next couple of weeks. And one reason for that coolness is with the shifting high pressure ridge, that allows a bit more in the way of subtropical moisture to come into the lower 48. So there's going to be quite a bit of rain falling in the Corn Belt, parts of the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, and also part of the western high plains in Nebraska, the Dakotas, the central and northern Rockies, both sides of the divide, have some good opportunities over the next 2 weeks to get some rain and also being able to enjoy some cooler temperatures. I wish I could say that this will also get into Washington and Oregon and Idaho, but those areas, while there is a chance for a little bit of shower and thunderstorm activity, they're still going to be suffering with more fire activity and more dryness.
Mm-hmm. As you look beyond the next couple of weeks out and we start, it seems like whenever I do the weather with you, it always reminds me of how fast the year and time is flying by. But as we look into that September and we start approaching the early part of fall, what do you anticipate with things happening? As you had said, a lot of the El Nino effects we really don't notice through those summer months, but as we get into the fall of the year, we really start to see those. So what do you anticipate when you're looking out into September across the country?
Well, in September, I do think we need to watch the Pacific because we talked about the hurricane heading towards Hawaii. There will be more hurricane and tropical storm activity off the coast of Mexico. And what will happen sometimes in these patterns, when we get a lot of activity there, in the month of September, you can see maybe more precipitation coming into the western United States than you would normally see. Now, that is all dependent if the pattern sets up correctly for the remains of hurricanes or tropical storms to drift in from the eastern Pacific into North America. It's hard to do that. It needs the right pattern. But if there's a year that could happen, it'll be this year, and it will be starting in September and could go into October.
Okay. All right, so you maybe kind of answered this question a little bit. Biggest winners, biggest losers in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, the southern plains, the south central United States is going to be the hottest and the driest. I guess we could call that with those areas the losers. The winners will be the Corn Belt, parts of the Midwest, and parts of the plain states that have a lot of thunderstorm activity and the type of thunderstorms that can produce quite a bit of rain, some severe weather with that as well. And that's going to be a winner, and those same areas also enjoying the second half of August with no real persistent extreme heat. A lot of the areas of the northern and central and western high plains that have been in such hot weather this summer will finally get to go through some weeks here with temperatures being what I call a lot more reasonable.
Yeah. Well, and I know one of the things a little bit as we started to see some of the storm activity across these drought areas, it's kind of a feast or famine kind of a deal, because some of these storms have been quite severe as they've moved across those dry areas. I mean, we're talking flash floods, tornadoes, those kinds of things.
Yeah, and the script can flip really quickly when you bring in this deeper subtropical air. And this pattern that's going to be evolving over the next, probably for the rest of August into early September, when you're in a drought, you can still have flash floods. And that is something that we've seen here recently, and that's something we're going to need to keep an eye on.
All right. Well, Don, good to visit with you, and we'll catch up with you on the next episode.
See you then.
You bet. And again, that was meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-range weather. If you want to tune in each and every morning to his daily video podcast, you can find the link at his website at dayweather.com.
Imagine keeping your cattle exactly where you want them, while being able to tap into insights powered by a collar and an app. No Fence is the world's first virtual fencing system for grazing livestock. From the palm of your hand and delivered with GPS technology, you can set and move pasture boundaries, gain insight into grazing patterns, receive reduced animal activity alerts, and more. No wires, no posts, just empowered grazing that supports healthier land and your herd goals. 10,000 plus producers globally already trust No Fence. Explore the possibilities at nofence.com.
With rising feed costs and the increased focus on sustainability within the beef industry, feed efficiency is more than a buzzword. It's rapidly becoming a battle cry and an industry challenge to do more with less. By incorporating today's Limousine and Limflex genetics into your planned crossbreeding program, you can capitalize on the breed's inherent feed efficiency advantage while still banking the premiums paid for high-quality, high-yielding carcasses. That's 2 ways to profit instead of 1. Let Limousine and Limflex deliver dollars to your bottom line. Limousine today, profit tomorrow.
Well, I know I mentioned it at the very top of the program, wanted to highlight it one more time, and that is the next edition of the Working Ranch radio show will be featuring Trey Patterson of the Padlock Ranch and John Maddox of Maddox Cattle Company in a conversation that I had with both of those gentlemen at the same time. In fact, it ended up being about a 60-minute conversation, so I don't know how we're going to fit that into a 45 to 50-minute content show, but we'll see what we can do in there, because just a lot of great conversation. Those two back and forth that I think some information in that. It doesn't really matter the size or the scope of your ranching operation, or even where you're located. There's things that they hit, some principles or things that they have used in their operations and over their years of experience in their commercial outfits that I think will be things that are very applicable to a lot of us. So I encourage you to join us on the next edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. And it kind of hinges a little bit off of a previous show that we had a couple weeks ago with Dr. Ron Gill, who's a professor and extension livestock specialist out of Texas A&M. It was episode 262, and we kind of titled that one, Has She Earned Another Year? As we were talking about culling cows. And so just kind of a focus here these last few weeks for a lot of us from the commercial side of the business. And again, that conversation that we'll have, I'm looking forward to sharing with you on the next edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show with John and Trey. It doesn't matter if you're a purebred outfit, if you're a registered outfit, if you're a commercial outfit, there's going to be parts of that conversation that are very useful to us, and I look forward to sharing that conversation with you. And finally, I know I mentioned this at the top of the program, but wanted to just mention it one more time, and that is that this year marks 20 years for Working Ranch Magazine. It was back in 2006 when that first issue went to print, and a lot of great folks have been a part of this endeavor over the years, and you're going to see in the upcoming issues as they highlight some of the memories and some of the people that have been a part of this 20-year road. And of course, the Working Ranch Radio Show evolving out of that. So be sure to check the next issues coming out. And if you don't have a subscription, now's a good time to get started. You can go to the website at workingranchmag.com. Well, the Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can send me an email at justin.workingranch@gmail.com. Thanks to the Captain Tim O'Byrne, executive producer, and to Paige Mills, production assistant. I'm Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.